Hey everyone, Cursed Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted. And right now we've got a Wilhelt the Rotcleaver Zombie Tribal deck. This deck comes to us from Philly Dumphy, who says, "Here's my attempt at a modified precon. Wilhelt the Rotcleaver. I haven't had a lot of success with the deck after 20 or so games, maybe 3 wins. I would really like this to work. Any help would be greatly appreciated." All right, Philly, we'll see what we can do here. As always, this deck list will be in the video description below, and I highly recommend you open it up on your own side, take a look, and see what we can do about this tribal deck in the ways that we can improve it. The first thing we'll do is we'll look at Wilhelt and what he brings as a zombie commander. Well, he says he's a 4 mana 3/3 in blue black, and he's a zombie, of course, as a tribe leader. And he says, whenever another zombie you control dies, if it didn't have decay, create a 2/2 black zombie token with decay. As a reminder, decayed zombies die after they attack, and they can't block. And then at your end step, you may sacrifice a zombie. If you do, you may draw a card. So Wilhelt is an interesting kind of tribal commander. He fits in this kind of archetype that Wizards was making with their cards for a while, where your commander is a 4 mana card advantage engine. Now, we've seen this a lot, especially there was a cycle that came out, it might have been around the D&D time. I'm thinking of Prosper mainly because Prosper is the most functional, like the most successful version of that card. But I even think stuff like Queen Marchesa is a really old version of this. Um, there's like that Fight Lady. There's a bunch of cards that are just at 4 mana, and their main ability beyond generally increasing the strength of your deck theme is that they enable card draw. Now, will health also helps by creating a bit of aristocrat synergy by letting your dead zombies return as 2/2s at minimum, and he himself being at least somewhat of a sacrifice outlet because once per turn you get at least one sacrifice. So I think generally when it comes down to zombie tribes, tribal leaders like commanders, Wilhelt is by far one of the strongest ones because it allows you to kind of branch out into any direction you want to go into and gives you a really nice baseline of power. But before we go any further, let's check out our mana curve. Our mana curve is nice. I do like it. I'm a little curious why it goes so high in a tribal deck. Unfortunately, I can't click here, but we can find out what they are. We can see that our 6 drops are Liliana Dreadhorde General, which is an incredibly powerful card, no problem here. Grave Titan, which is at least on Tribe, but not a card I particularly like, but I think it works here because it's on Tribe. Coat of Arms, which represents a very quick victory in this game. And Rooftop Storm, which is a very interesting card because it makes all your zombies free to cast. And then up here as the 1/7 mana card, we have Necrotic Hex, which each player sacrifices 6 creatures. You get 6/2/2 zombies, which is also interesting. So this deck is a modified pre-constructed deck. And I'm going to say for the most case, it really does feel that way. You can see the parts of the deck that were already there, mainly through the symbols over here that I believe Rotcleaver, yeah, you can see any card with that symbol. It's pretty safe to say came in with the original deck. Not to say that it's not a correct card to play, but it's good to note when you look at these kind of decks to note, and this program, Mana Box, also is nice enough to say right here to confirm it's coming from Midnight Hunt Commander, right? And so we should be keeping that in mind to see which cards have been changed, which cards have not been changed. And I think something that's really noticeable about this deck is that we're playing Zombie Tribal, and we only have 23 creatures. I think that's really interesting because traditionally, when you are playing a tribal deck, you want to have as many creatures of that tribe as possible, mainly for the synergies, but also because that's kind of what you want to do. Now, there's room for this deck to have non-creature zombie spells. Um, And the thing is, there's really not that many. I'm looking at Liliana Death's Majesty, Liliana Dreadhorde General as the main zombie producers that aren't creatures. But for the rest of them, there's really not that much. Curse of the Restless Dead is really the one that catches my eye. But otherwise, there's not really much here. I guess Startle makes a zombie, but that I don't know if that really counts. And then, of course, all of these with Poppet Stitcher also create zombies, but once again, they're zombies with decay. So we've got kind of a limit here of the usability of some of the tribe because we've kind of cut down a lot on the slots for creatures, right? Now, if we look here, we've got I guess Crowded Crypt definitely creates zombies, but it's a lot of work. Herald's Horn, Heraldic Banner. So what's interesting is looking at this deck, it really does feel this creates zombies too. It really does feel that zombies were removed from this deck to put in cards to support the zombies, which unfortunately creates a kind of a feedback loop here, where we're taking more zombies out to improve the zombies that we have, but zombies isn't the kind of tribe that like runs on, let's say, five really good zombies. I think maybe humans is like that, but zombies is a lot more of a deck that aims to flood the board with tokens and then use those tokens to push for victory, right? Um, though there's a lot of strength in a creature like Gravecrawler, this deck isn't really equipped to kind of take advantage of that. And I think that's going to be my main direction I'm going to suggest is that this deck seems more designed like this deck has a direction that I think would be more suited for a bit of more of an aristocrats build. The commander is kind of set up for that. A lot of zombies, and especially the decayed zombies, get better when you're using them for sacrificing effects. So I'm going to probably make suggestions towards taking advantage of that element of the deck. One of the, and kind of like the poster child of this, is the mechanic Decayed. A decayed zombie can't block, so though it takes up real estate on your board, it's actually not that good. And ultimately, and this is pretty important, once it attacks, it dies. So either you're going to just be burning through these zombies incredibly quickly, because when you think about it, each zombie is just 2 damage. So that's what a 5%, I guess, of an opponent's health. That's not even right, is it? Maybe that's right. I'm not sure, but it's a very small percentage of each of your opponent's health, and then it's gone. So especially when I look at cards like Startle, where though it replaces itself, its whole point in the deck is to create a 2/2, and then once that 2/2 attacks and deals damage, it's just gone forever, is kind of a problem here, right? I think that's kind of the main thing. So if we're going to be using these zombies, I want there to be more death triggers, or I want there to be more things that can sacrifice and take advantage of all these extra bodies that we have around. Also, for what it's worth, I think I think we have a higher mana curve in some places that's a little confusing to me. If artifact or creature, what does Parharmonicon work with here? Because I don't know what the ETBs here are. I guess Grave Titan. I don't think there's that many, right? Like unless I'm really missing a really big combo. I guess Tainted Adversary, but that's still a lot of mana. I guess Champion of the Parish. But Parharmonicon feels weird here because I don't really know what it's for. But there's definitely like you can see a lot of the threes and twos are right here. All of these support cards, all of this mana. And I think you could cut out a lot of it. These are really good cards in other decks. This deck doesn't need to be ramping this hard. I think like it's great to have Arcane Signet, Dimir Signet, Talisman of Dominance. You do need a bit of ramp, But I don't think you also need Pillar of Origins. I don't think you also need Heraldic Banner or Herald's Horde, like a Crowded Crypt. Like this is a lot of mana ramp for a deck that you could have a lot of low mana zombies really easily. In the same way, Necrotic Hex is really, really cool, but do you really need it that badly? I would argue no. 7 mana is a lot for this deck, whereas Damnation just gets the job done most of the time as well. Because I don't know, are the you do have the ability to have 6 tokens to sacrifice, so you can keep Wilhelt on the battlefield, but 7 mana is a lot, and I think I would just be rather casting Damnation when I could. Also, Rooftop Storm, which is a really, really cool card, I don't think particularly belongs here. Like, Rooftop Storm is really, really good as a, unsurprisingly, as a storm card, where you're constantly drawing cards and constantly drawing zombies, and you're able to cast them. But here, your main card advantage engine is Wilhelt, which is once per turn. Whereas something like that you're already playing, such as Black Market, well, Black Market is already going to fulfill your mana needs as long as you get it going, and it's 1 mana less, and it also you can use this to cast your other black cards, which I will point out a lot of your enchantments, sorry, a lot of your non-creature spells that have a color are black. So those are the ones that immediately kind of take a, also startle, toss startle, but these are the ones that immediately get my attention. So the next thing I want to do generally is we want to take a look at some zombies that we might be missing. So I mean, before we get anywhere, you should be playing Carrion Feeder. One of the things I'm going to be suggesting is more zombies at lower mana costs, and then the aristocrat cards, but this fits into both slots, where Carrion Feeder will be eating your decayed creatures, and because it's an instant sacrifice, what you can do is you can still attack with those decayed creatures, and when their decay trigger for them to be destroyed is on the stack, Carrion Feeder then eats them, growing. Carrion Feeder also obviously works incredibly well with Gravecrawler because you can repeatedly put mana into him or it. This is the version I play because I got the Junji Ito cards. Um, you can repeatedly eat the same Gravecrawler over and over again to grow this creature, which I think is pretty good. All right, so let's take a look generally at what kind of zombies that we want. So we're going to put in zombies. We're going to put in black and blue. We're going to do it by mana. And I think, let's take a look. So something I'm willing to do, I don't always do, is we can look by EDH rank. Um, EDH rec rank. I don't always do this. I do this sometimes when I want to, like, I know there's just an absurdly high amount of cards to go through. Like, there's about 500 cards here, and unfortunately, a lot of them are not going to be good just because zombies is a very common tribe that they print cards into. So, this kind of saves us a little bit of time, though I recommend still being able to, go back and look through the zombies in earnest. This is just a time-saving mechanic. So, looking over here, we can see almost already there's really good suggestions here of zombies to play. Gray Merchant is fantastic in a deck. It works with Harmonicon. If you want to keep that card, it just drains a bunch of life and then becomes a sacrifice target, which I think is particularly good because it's just a body after that. Which reminds me, okay, we're going to make a note here. We're also going to look at Feign Death after this. All right, so let's see what else. Fleshbag Marauder. I don't know if you're playing that. Nice, easy, kind of across the board removal spell where everyone sacrifice something, which is really good because you're very token heavy, so you'll always have a creature to sacrifice. It also triggers Wilhelt. Considering Wilhelt is like right here, I'm imagining a lot of these cards are going to be around Wilhelt anyways. Midnight Reaper, you're already playing. Murderous Rider's fine. I don't love it, but it is removal, so that's something to consider. Sidisi is something I'm going to tell you to definitely play. This is another higher mana cost one, but I think it's very, very strong and somewhat stronger than something like, I don't know, this I would even say it's stronger than the Scarab God, but I do like the Scarab God, so definitely stronger than Grave Titan, but leave that as well. Um, the fact that Sidisi tutors a card makes it on par with Diabolic Tutor and Demonic Tutor, which I would take out Diabolic Tutor for Sidisi, and I would leave Demonic Tutor, Diabolic Intent. You have a lot of tutors. This is something that is very interesting to me, is that you've put in a lot of really, really strong cards. And we talk about this every now and then where someone is trying to upgrade a precon, and what they do is they take a creature base that may not be the strongest, and they upgrade it with an incredibly powerful non-creature base. You can see you're playing Vamp Tutor, you're playing Rhystic Study, you're playing Brainstorm, which I also think doesn't particularly belong here. I would probably cut that as well. Um, but you're playing a lot of tutors, you're playing Reanimate. These are really, really good cards, but the creature base at the moment just can't support something like that, right? If you want to go the reanimation variant, which is something I think you can do, you're going to need some really, really big cards. You're going to need something like Vile Entomber and Entomb to put your preferred zombie into the graveyard and then reanimate it using cards like Reanimate or Animate Dead. Looking down, Fallen Shinobi, once again, that's high mana. I'm looking for lower mana cards. And the thing is, I know the lower mana ones aren't as attractive. Apprentice Necromancer, I think, is a particularly good one. Where are you? You don't seem to be playing. Apprentice Necromancer sacrifices itself to reanimate a creature. So it's a one-turn sacrifice and then can be brought back with other means. By sacrificing itself, you make another body. Let's see. Plague Belcher, is that in here? It is not. I would recommend Plague Belcher. This is one of the really important ones, I think. Plague Belcher, a little pricey. You can get it for a few bucks. Plague Belcher says that whenever your zombies die, you're going to ping each of your opponents. I think this is really, really important because this is part of the aristocrat strategy in zombies that you want all of those decayed creatures, those decayed zombie tokens, to have an additional effect when they die. Because one of the problems is the other main effect here is Midnight Reaper, and Midnight Reaper says non-token. So that's a little tricky here to get going. In fact, if you want another effect like this as a card draw, Dark Prophecy, there we go. Dark Prophecy is probably the one you want to go to, which just says whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card and lose a life. So almost the same as Midnight Reaper, except for it's not a creature, it's not a zombie, and it's 3 black. However, it does pick non-token creatures, so your decayed creatures do generate card draw, which I think is particularly good. Oops, I don't want to keep Feign Death there. Let's see. Go back here. Anything else that really jumps by? Things like Shambling Ghast are perfectly playable. When it dies, you get a treasure token. I think that's great. Relentless Dead is a fan favorite. I don't really like Relentless Dead, especially at the price tag of being $10. This card has so much text, and so much of it is kind of irrelevant half the time. Like you need to hold up so much mana that it needs to die on your terms. It's a lot. However, I mean, it's a fun card. For players who like this kind of effect, that's the reason it has a $10 price tag. It's just not entirely worth that much money. So it'll be up to you to kind of decide on that one. Now, these are the ones I wanted to talk about. So there's 2 kinds of creatures that I think are also worth considering. This one is specific, so I will talk about Undead Butler. But Undead Butler is the kind of creature that has a good ETB and a good leaf play, well, dies in this case, where Undead Butler, when it goes away, you get to return one of your creatures back from the grave to your hand, which is really, really strong. On the negative side, Undead Butler is permanently gone after that, but I mean, it still dies, so you still get the decay trigger out of it, but it's good at digging towards your stronger zombies and getting the ones you want. And I think that's kind of important because you kind of have a lull here at 1 and 2. You have very, very low amounts of zombies, which is preventing you from getting ahead early game. And I think that might be a part of the reason you're not finding very much success with the deck, is because you're spending, it really feels like looking at this deck list, is you're spending the first few turns setting up, and this isn't that kind of deck, right? Zombies isn't the kind of deck that sets up by playing mana rocks into its commander, because even if you turn 3 play Wilhelt, he doesn't do anything by himself. You actually need a second zombie to die for it to be able to die, for you to be able to draw the card, get the decayed zombie, and move on. So it's kind of a problem that you are all of your low plays are like mana setup, whereas what you really want is many more low plays that just put things on the board, give you some board presence, get you some early attacks, especially. So, what I'm going to suggest is Nested Shambler and the like. What do I mean at the like? I think the other one that's generally around is like something like Doomed Dissenter, which I probably, no, I spelled it right. Doomed Dissenter, which is a human that when it dies creates a zombie token. But this one is a little more direct, Nested Shambler. I think there's quite a few of these kind of cards. I can do a search for them in a second, but Nested Shambler is just a really good example, right? It is a 1/1 creature, and when it dies, it creates squirrels for the number of for its power. Now, squirrels are not zombies. Don't I do understand I do understand the basic anatomy here, but it does something when it dies. It both provides presence, it provides a bonus to pumping Nested Shambler if you have a Lord out or another way to increase its strength. You get more squirrels, but it can be easily sacrificed to your commander, and you don't feel like you're falling behind. It's also the kind of creature that just with Phyrexian Arena or Carrion Feeder represents 2 sacrifices. So for the sake of this, let's see if we can find anything else. When dies, so let's say creature when dies create, and then put in black blue. And let's look without zombies first. There's not that many anyways. Let's go mana value. So the Nested Shambler, Shambling Ghast. We've already suggested this is very good. Carrier Thrall is a vampire, so we don't care too much about it. Discordant Piper is another good one because it's a zombie that creates a goat. And Doom Dissenter, as mentioned before, is a human that creates a zombie. White is interesting. I don't know if you're playing white. No. White is interesting. I don't particularly love white because it works a lot better in 1v1 kind of setups where you force a block. But white is a very aggressively costed, like it's a 3/2 for 2, which is pretty good. So with that, you can kind of play that, and if it trades in any way, you get a 2/2. But I don't know if I love that. Um, Headless Rider, of course, works really, really well with all of these creatures. It makes it a little nicer because you're already playing this card, right? It makes it nicer for the original creatures that die to have been zombies so that you get the extra token. Hobbling Zombie is at 3, and I think that's where I would cut off this ability unless it's creating multiple zombies, which I think there's a Nested Shambler, I believe. No, that's the small one. I could be wrong. I think it was a Phyrexian card where it would spawn zombies, but Malfell Twins obviously would be the like really, really big version of that, which is just basically Grave Titan, but worse in every way. So don't play those. The main ones I would say would be the really, really low mana ones that I pointed out, namely Nested Shambler, Discordant Piper, Doom Dissenter, Shambling Ghast. Just giving you extra sacrifices and extra things to do with those sacrifices. These also combo well with the Scarab God because you're really happy to get these creatures back as 4/4s because you just kind of refresh the entire cycle and you get more and more bodies out of them. So I think that is pretty good. Let me see. Right, let's talk very briefly about Feign Death because I think this is the kind of card the deck can benefit from. So Feign Death effects, there are a few of them. Feign Death, Undying Malice, Undying something is the other one. Undying Evil, I believe, is the other one. Yeah. And there's Malakir Rebirth. So there's several of these kind of effects. And I think they would slot pretty nicely in a deck like this. You already have what I would consider a normal to high amount of mana sacrifice outlets, and you could definitely play more if you wanted to. Like you could play Viserys here in addition to Carrion Feeder, among other things. And so what you can do is, for example, you can use these defensively. So if someone targets your Wilhelt, you can feign death Wilhelt to get them back, which is sometimes nice. But I'm also thinking about it very much so with cards like Grave Titan and cards like Grey Merchant. Like the ability to, I'm so glad they made this card. Now that every time I search Grey Merchant, that I'm gonna get the alphabet one too. But uh, being able to feign death Grey Merchant represents a tremendous amount of damage, and I think that's already something that you have access to because you have the Cleaver Scab, which splits a splits a Grey Merchant in half. And since those Grey Merchants keep, because they're copies, they keep their mana cost, they represent a tremendous, like if you just have Grey Merchant, you play Grey Merchant, and you have no other black pips on your side of the board, that's 2 damage across the field. If you then Cleaver Scab that Grey Merchant, that alone is 8 damage because each of them see each other for 4 pips, and that's 2 triggers, that's 8 damage. And if you have Par Harmonicon, that gets stupid. And that's just the basic setup of the lowest chance, or sorry, the lowest amount of pips available. If you have even 1 or 2 black pips around, that damage like gets exponentially bigger incredibly fast. Um, so I would definitely consider Feign Death effects as both defensive and proactive plays. Sorry, the whole point, I forgot to finish the sentence. You can Feign Death a creature and then Cleaver Scab it or any other way. So even if you don't have Cleaver Scab, because that would be the ultimate thing, because you get 3 copies of the creature. But if you know you have a Grave Titan and you just want more zombies, you can cast Feign Death on it and then sacrifice it to Phyrexian Altar. All of a sudden, your Grave Titan comes back and you have 2 more zombies that you can also sacrifice. I think that's particularly strong here. So taking advantage of that, I think, is pretty good. You're playing Village Rites. I think you could get away with playing another one of those effects, namely, let's see, sacrifice a creature and draw 2. The other one, there's Deadly Dispute is probably the one I would suggest as the second copy because it creates a treasure token, which can be helpful for ramping. Alternatively, it gives you something to do with your mana rocks that kind of lose a lot of power in the late game because this is the kind of deck that doesn't have a huge amount of mana troubles. Alternatively, you could grab the other Corrupted Conviction here is at 1 black, and I believe there's one more, but I could be wrong. The fact that Village Rites doesn't show, oh, it's because it's not by mana. It's like, why is Village Rites not here? So Conviction, Village Rites, I guess those are both the 1 mana ones. Altar's Reap represents just 2 mana 2, Costly Plunder, Deadly Dispute, Nasty End, etc. Bankrupt in Blood is doable. It's a lot of creatures to draw 3 cards, so I don't necessarily love it. I think I would play Nasty End before that, with the upside that if you have a legendary creature, you get that additional draw. I don't know what the feasibility of that is, but it is there. So, adding those for a little bit more card draw, and I think mainly the deck will improve a lot by those additions by itself. I'm looking at this deck and I don't think I can see why it's probably not performing well. It's just got a low creature, it's got a low like card budget for creatures, and though you added incredibly powerful cards like Demonic Tutor, you don't really have anything to go and grab with them. So I might even suggest, and I know this is a little confusing, but I might even suggest that you can take these cards out. I know Demonic Tutor is an incredibly powerful magic card, and it's just very strange for someone to suggest to take it out. But the deck does not merit Demonic Tutor, really. Like, I guess merit's the wrong word. It just it doesn't have a use for it. Like you're playing Demonic Tutor and then what? You could be tutoring for like Rhystic Study, uh, or like Necroduality or Cleaver Scab, which I believe are some of your strongest cards. Or if you really wanted Turgid or Scaregrod, or like you like the top end, like grabbing Dread Horde General is really, really cool. But those things don't necessarily like just win you the game, which is kind of the strength of Demonic Tutor. So, and even then, you might need a turn cycle for Demonic Tutor to do anything because you cast it, and then do you have enough mana to immediately cast Liliana Dreadhorde General, or do you have immediate time to cast Damnation, right? Uh, and if you don't have Damnation, you have Necrotic Hex. Do you have the 9 mana to immediately cast that? Probably not. So it's going to take 2 turns anyways. So I wonder if these cards, like, I know it sounds silly, but like, when would you rather just play Sign in Blood? Like, what is the point that having 2 cards like going up on card advantage is probably just better than putting 1 card on in hand? It's definitely better than Vampiric Tutor, I will say, in this deck. I would rather play Sign in Blood because card advantage is just kind of better here than going down because Vampiric Tutor puts it on top of your deck, so you're going down in card advantage. And yeah, you could get a really strong card, but I don't know. I don't think the deck has that power level in mind at the moment. So those are my thoughts. I think the deck is on its way of being a very strong zombie tribal deck. Oh, you are playing this. Okay, never mind. I did not see Hoveling Spot Zombie. Okay, perfect. But yes, I think this is on the Ooh, are you playing Urborg? Sorry, I just noticed. So Master gives everything Swamp Walk. Swamp Walk. You want to be playing Urborg in the deck. Where is this to make all lands swamps, so all your zombies are unblockable? Sorry, I did not see that. That would be something I would immediately say. I can't believe Urborg has gotten such a high cost these days. My goodness. All right, well, do your best. If you can't afford it, I completely understand it is an expensive card, but um, yeah. Otherwise, this deck is on its way to being a good zombie deck. I think what my recommendations are to lean more towards the strength that Wilhelt offers, increasing the number of your creatures and maybe decreasing some of the mana rocks or some of the more superfluous or very flashy cards that don't progress your game plan, and see how that goes. See how those games play, and after which, if you're a little more satisfied and you want more changes, send me a new version of the list. As always, if you want to send me a new draft of this deck or any deck, there is a link to the form to send me those links, to send me the decks in the video description below. Also, while I have your attention on the video description below, I'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, do the whole YouTube thing. It's always helpful for the channel. Um, but I am interested to see where this goes. I like the idea of upgrading precons because everyone talks about it, but everyone means something incredibly different when they say that. So some want to upgrade a precon as it's the starting place of their deck. So that's what it feels like here. Like for example, I got a black green elves deck, the precon. I got that for my partner, and and I helped her build it up. And one of the things I did was make that into a black green elf deck. And that was the purpose of it. And I think that's kind of where this is, where you are taking this as your baseline to build into a proper, tribal deck. But another way that people build up precons is they try to maintain the power level or the playability of the deck at a lower level. And I don't think that's what's happening here, but I think that's interesting too. It's interesting to sometimes keep precons low power because they do continue to serve as introductory decks for players who want to join in. So that, if I have some friends over who want to play Magic for the first time or play Commander for the first time, I can give them modified precons which have the same kind of accessibility, quote unquote, of a precon in theory, but are probably built to be just a little more fluid or a little more functional. Anyways, kind of went on a different direction there, but I hope this was all helpful, and I'm really excited to maybe see another draft of this deck if you're interested, because Zombie Tribal is fun, and I love seeing it. All right, good luck.